Welcome to the Teachers Pep Rally, everyone. If you missed our last episode, we learned valuable steps and tools to help students learn to code, thanks to our very own Fred Abley and his business at Get Me Coding. If you missed the conversation, go back and check it out on your favorite audio platform or by visiting our YouTube channel. Please like it, share it, and review it. Our guest today is an educator who believes he has been in the right place at the right time and in great company to have his voice heard. Hope that will now include us. He currently serves as a solutions engineer specialist with Instructure. He has worked in a large Georgia school district as a teacher, a coach, and a coordinator for virtual learning. In addition, he has represented Kennesaw State University's I Teach team as a coach and project lead. To paraphrase Sydney Harris, he says he believes that good education turns mirrors into windows. Welcome to the Teachers Pep Rally, Max Gertz.
Hey,
Awesome.
welcome, Max.
Welcome.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, you label yourself as an EdTech nerd, which I absolutely love. But can you tell us why you call yourself an EdTech nerd?
Absolutely. So it is not something that I sought out, and I think that might be a little bit different than some other people who find themselves really diving into what EdTech is. I remember in grad school, I thought there was no way I was ever going to need anything other than a whiteboard and or a blackboard, maybe a projector. And then a couple of years into teaching English, I found myself enamored with all of the possibilities, and really dove into all the different ways that technology could augment the classroom, and could augment student experience. And from there, like I said, I've been really lucky in who I've been able to connect with, in who I've been able to work with, and it's just brought me to dive deeper into what technology does. And all the different ways that it can bring students closer to experiences in a lot of different ways, in a number of different modalities. So I love what technology can do, and I love what it brings to learners, and that's why I've self-defined, and found myself to be an EdTech nerd.
I love that because, it's one thing and there's nothing wrong with it. If it's just something like I want to go in, with ed technology as my thing, that's what I'm going to focus on. But for you, it sounds like it was kind of like an exploration and discovery that you didn't know existed for you as a passion. So I think that kind of adds another element to it. So is there any moment so far in your career that you feel like has continued to shape your passion for ed tech? Any sweet little stories?
Honestly, using Nearpod the first time in my class was probably the aha moment for me. I met another awesome friend of mine who now works at Microsoft, actually. And he was early on, he was a Kennesaw State I Teach coach, and he showed me how Nearpod worked and the ability to bring students in the classroom and just allow them to do things asynchronously. It was really about just allowing them to be around the room or around wherever they wanted to be, right? And I think that learning is probably best when we don't feel like we're being forced into it. And like you said, I think that I got really lucky in a lot of opportunities and a lot of just different ways that I fell into technology. So that was the moment where I was like, oh, this works as a hook, and it can work beyond that as a way to engage.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I started playing around with Nearpod, thinking about that English language arts teacher as well, it brought a whole different game to Shakespeare, right? Because I had a lot of students who haven't had a lot of chances to travel, especially outside the country. So to be able to have that 3D view feature where we could go to the Globe Theater and check that out and have a better view of what we've been talking about was really, really cool.
Is it appropriate for me to ask like what your favorite things, and this is to everybody because it's like one of my favorite things to ask anybody in education, what their favorite thing is to teach or to lead students through the subject?
I already know my answer, but I'll let Pete or Fred go first.
Pete, I'll let you go first in this one.
In general or technology, with technology?
in general.
In general.
Technology helps, great, but
I love putting on shows with kids. I love putting on shows with kids. That sparks me like nothing else. And also I like, it's called modern band method. So the kids pick out a song that they want. We form a band in class. They each pick an instrument, and we work on that for a few weeks and eventually put it together. Maybe have a battle of bands or something at the end. So get the iPads out. Maybe they're making their own thing on GarageBand, making their own beats, their own compositions. Maybe they're getting a QR code off of, we use Quaver. That's my music curriculum that I use. Maybe they scan that and they learn about a band. Hey, I like this song. Then they get the sheet music to it. Then they decipher the chords. So we're definitely using technology as a tool, and it helps out a lot. But I like the stuff when a lesson goes off the rails and I just let them play and let's make some music together and jam. That's what I really like the best. Who's laughing? Is Fred laughing?
Yeah, I'm laughing. Yeah.
Why are you laughing?
Going off the rails. That was basically this
totally.
week for me. So
every day. Every day.
How about you, Fred?
So, when I kind of stumbled into education, I was introduced to problem-based learning. So PBL was the real big thing, and it still is a thing, obviously. But I think where that led me to was gamification. So I'm a big fan of gamifying stuff. So I teach the technology topics, from programming to databases to design even. But I also was teaching a course on terrorism because of my background in the military. So I really started to lean into real creative and engaging ways to get students more into the material, because it was really dry. It was a security risk analysis course. Even though the key pieces were really interesting, there was a lot of reading, and students typically, especially the tech students, don't like to read. So I kind of got, I did a little bit of homework, a little bit of exploring, but gamification, any opportunity I get to gamify learning in the classroom, I love it. I just think education should be fun. And I know I get a lot of grief from that, because there's that, as soon as you say that, the rigor word kind of wraps itself right around the discussion. And I get it. It needs to be there, but I think it could be a lot of fun too along the way.
All right. So for me, I've got a couple different ones, but I think I'm going to lean a little bit hard on Jane Austen for a minute, because that was always an introduction to a lot of students, especially some boys who maybe, had some uncomfortable conversations as we looked through different critical lenses and looked at the way that the society rules were. We would talk about etiquette and that kind of thing. And I would always throw a ball, and it would be just like, as much as I could, it's just like we would do like they did during Jane Austen's time period, and the kids would all come all dressed up. I would go meet them at a local Goodwill that was near one of our MARTA train stations if they wanted to after school for some of the kids, and find them some blazers or scarves that the guys would wrap around their necks and stuff. And it just was really cool because it allowed them to compare whatever the societal norms were then, and then also think about and they would be like, oh, this is so ridiculous. But it's like, okay, but now let's list at what we seem to have nowadays. And so it didn't use a lot of technology, but, nowadays you can use, I think it's fun to use like AI, and let's have a conversation as if we're talking to one of the characters in Jane Austen. And you have to use critical thinking skills to determine, the time period, what the language would sound like, what would be appropriate for maybe a lady to say to a man, or vice versa, or that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm going to lean into Jane Austen because that was always fun. The balls were a lot of fun because I'd make them dance and I'd introduce them when they come in and they'd get really into it. We'd have tea and cookies and stuff like that. Great question, Max. How about you? Do you have an answer to that?
I loved when kids, like for me, like the light bulb moment, and like 11th grade English as long as I was ever in the classroom. And I taught Gatsby, and I know it's like a super dated, and I loved flipping it on its head as many ways as we could, and exploring like who Gatsby, like if Gatsby's just this figurative character, who he could be, and all the different like lenses you could play with him, because he's not defined. And seeing, so for me, the exciting thing was like a kid came up with, well, what if he was X, or what if it was a she, or what if, and like you had the opportunity to play out those scenarios and had them kind of remix the story in a way that maybe was or wasn't intended, but kind of that whole concept of, the author's dead, and really allowing them to sort of run with their ideas. Somebody came up with, I had an IB class who students pod who formed and decided to play out Gatsby as Jesus and played the entire, like, put everybody in context.
Wow.
And it was impressive, and I was like, I don't know who some of these people are, but their ability to run with it, right? And I think that there was definitely that theme, students' abilities to just run with concepts.
Yeah, I
absolutely.
I agree. I love that stuff. When you see, you have that idea, you're going to convey something, and they take that idea and then they take it in a totally different direction than you ever expected. I love that. That's something that keeps me coming back every year, every semester. So that's always fun.
My niece is a junior and she's about to start The Great Gatsby. So I asked her this week and I said, have you seen the movie or anything? She's like, no. And I'm like, good. Don't. I was like, just read it front to back without any spoilers as best as you can, because I can't wait to hear what she thinks. Cool. Well, this makes me kind of think about what we asked you to come and share, kind of some stories, or let's think about the power of equity in education. I think we all kind of just described, we love to provide various opportunities for our students to just be able to own their own learning and whatever that looks like. So when you think of defining the power of equity in education, why is that so important to you, Max? To you personally?
So,
why?
Yeah, it became really personal when I student taught in North Nashville, which I'm sorry, it wasn't North Nashville. It was way north of Nashville, just below Kentucky. So when Kentucky had blizzards, we were out of school when I student taught, and seeing the entire, just complete different socioeconomic backgrounds that students came from in that community was really a powerful experience. And it wasn't necessarily racial, but it had a lot to do with how students were growing up and how students had just different opportunities and coming to class every day with a completely different notion of what school was supposed to be. And equity, to me, equity is, right, that power, that opportunity for access. But beyond access, it's the opportunity to succeed. And so when students have the opportunity to contextualize things, I think the way that we were all talking about, in their own voice and for their own purpose, it makes learning that much deeper and it makes it that much more powerful. And on top of that, the goal of education is to be a factor of equity for our society. And so, like, that is something that I saw, and something that, quite frankly, like, drove me to technology at one point. And that power of, I can do things in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't matter how I do it, as long as that I can show that I can. That to me is where equity really belongs in education, and it really is like that powerful kind of kernel that we may not say every day, but I think teachers mean.
Yeah. How have you seen technology then used in some of these challenges to try to kind of even it out a little bit, whether it's through access or, like you said, providing opportunities for everyone as best as you can? How have you seen technology do that in your, from your student teacher years to now, even? Like, let's just open the net wide open.
It completely drove me to so the position that I held in Fulton County when I was the coordinator of virtual learning. I was basically running our virtual program, which is it's a pretty large virtual program. We had 10,000 enrollments per semester, so that's not necessarily students. That's enrollments. So students were taking more than one. But the power of such a large county, and for context, Atlanta, it runs from North Atlanta to South Atlanta. So you'd have all those socioeconomic statuses in between. and the opportunity for students to engage with one another, because there was some of that opportunity within our courses, and I was moving to build that opportunity. That was my goal. The other thing is that it afforded a lot of students the opportunity to take some courses that they wouldn't have the opportunity to take in their schools. So we offered a Chinese program. There was students who were accelerated in math could take, we had middle schoolers taking algebra courses, taking AB calculus courses, which were extraordinary to me, but their expectation was to have that opportunity, right? And that is really, I think, the power of virtual education, that you can take any place, any space at your own pace. And, we see a lot of that now. The big equity thing that I always, that I would go back and reference is like, what does the GED do? And it provides equity. And it was, what was the purpose of the GED? Well, after World War II, you had Air Force soldiers who weren't able to complete high school. So that's where the GED comes from. And now the opportunity, of the GED for so many adults beyond, like, that's really kind of where, that's that power of, I can get back on an even footing with a lot of other people in our society.
Oh, what's real interesting, coming into this discussion, I thought you were going to just say something now, but coming into this discussion, we're in the Northeast, I'm in the Northeast, and we're having a lot of disruptive winter weather. Back when we were in COVID, my university recognized how many areas within Pennsylvania didn't have good internet access. And it wasn't widely published, but I did sit on a committee where I became aware that we deployed wireless, I'll call them carts, throughout the region to beam signal to homes that didn't have access. Because there is that not a misconception, but I guess there's that lack of understanding by a lot of people that we're not all in a metro area. We're not all in a really wired area. We don't have that, the ubiquity across the country, or that seamlessness access across the country. And then, so we had this disruptive weather. And so, you see the schools, the K through 12 schools, they'll close, but they'll go to virtual learning. They'll go to all these things. We don't. When we say that we close, we are closed. I can't deliver anything directly during a scheduled time. And it has everything to do with what we're discussing, and it's access. Because as I was sharing with my students, because they were asking, why can't we just go to Zoom? Why can't we continue to learn? And it comes down to the fact that some of our students need our technology that's available right on premise that they have to come to. So, even though we're talking about an issue, it may sound to a lot of people listening to this like, oh, we've already arrived, we're good to go, and look at all the stuff that we're doing. There's still a lot of good work that needs to be done. And it's folks like you that are hopefully, and I know who you work with, but there's some things there's gaps that have to be closed. The digital divide is far from closed. So it's interesting hearing what you're saying.
So Fred kind of alluded to it. So you're here as Max and representing Max, the educator and the coach and the EdTech Nerd, but you also do work for, I'm going to say it's a big name. I think Instructure, is a pretty big name in higher education, K through 12. But do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and what that service kind of looks like for schools?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instructure is the maker of Canvas, maybe our most famous platform, and the Instructure learning platform. But there's a lot of other products and services that Instructure houses that I don't think people know about. Canvas, number one, of course. Mastery Connect as an assessment engine, which is primarily a K-12 engine, however, provides a lot of data. So if you're a teacher and you're moving towards data-driven discussions, it can be really helpful. Just in my own experience with a number of school districts, Mastery Connect is a wonderful kind of, just in terms of equity, like the inability as an English teacher, speaking as an English teacher, to really break down, hey, what did I actually test there? And if we're not familiar with what a good assessment looks like, what that is. So Mastery Connect, phenomenal product. Learn platform, which helps administrators, district admin, see what their teachers are using and actually make sure that they're paying for the right things. So, and especially in the cases for for smaller districts without that much income and disposable opportunities to use it, really making sure that you're being as efficient with your money as possible, and something that I've definitely had some experience with in planning for budgets and then getting yelled at by people for not adhering to them. The the last thing I'll talk about is Impact, which is a really phenomenal engine for putting triggers on pages and helping guide people through technology. So just kind of a helper. And then on the back end, there's a number of analytics tools that it utilizes. And it all makes up like this one platform. And to the point of equity, every single person, almost every single person that I work with at Instructure is and or was a teacher in some capacity, which is probably what makes it such a great place to work. And Fred, to your point earlier, you enjoyed working with it, and the best thing that I ever do is go out and hear from faculty, hear from teachers who say, "Oh yeah, we wanted that thing in Canvas 2 years ago, and it just popped in." And so like that is really the power of being able to work with a company like that that's listening to the users as much as possible.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the interactions I've had primarily through the booths at conferences on the vendor floor, but they've always been great conversations, and knowing and having lived through several LMSs, learning management systems, and then arriving at Canvas, it was like a new day dawning type of thing for us, because I think one of the things, if you haven't used a tool like Canvas, or you haven't used Canvas is, I think, highly customizable. It allows you to do so much that can be tailored to the way you do teach, and with great control too. And I think that's what I really like about it. And I like also the insights that are available that we have that we've woven into our version of Canvas. And those are really helpful on so many levels too. It allows you to see so much more about the student than you would normally, because a lot of the information would be available to us, but it would be in disparate systems. Now they're all being pulled into a little bit of a dashboard, and you quickly could see, who are these students sitting in front of you. And that really becomes really, really helpful in our World Campus setting. So I teach also online through our World Campus. And when they're not physically in front of you, it helps to have a little bit of a background on them, because it helps you understand how to have a conversation with them a little bit better.
Absolutely. So can you tell us, Max, a little bit about some of the maybe innovative projects or initiatives at Instructure that are aimed at promoting equity in education? Because, I mean, if you just go straight to the homepage, that word is like, it's right there in front of you. So I know that is part of the strategic plan or vision or mission or whatever of it. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. As a online cloud-based learning management system, students who log into Canvas don't necessarily have all the same faculties or abilities as everyone else. And so accessibility has been placed front of mind, with just some of it just adhering to some of the laws that have just been passed. But to be to have our VPATs and be compliant, I believe by 2026, are some of those notes that we've made. And early on, like what I really wanted to bring was actually demo the accessibility checker, which, if anybody uses Canvas, is immediately bottom right of your rich content editor, and it just kind of lets you know it's a quick check. It's not as comprehensive as it could be, and it might get a little bit better. So that's pretty exciting. But what is accessible in your page, what's not accessible in your page, and I think that's a lot of things that we may or may not think about all the time. So I didn't really think, what fonts are good on what backgrounds, or what headers should go where. Having a meeting recently with the Unison group, their attention to detail and what was needed for their students who need screen readers, for their students who need mouse adaptation. There's a lot of opportunity for the product to just be all in all more accessible. So there's a ton coming down the pipe in regards to accessibility. across the platform, and it's not just going to be Canvas. So I am lucky enough to be in the position to have sat in some of those meetings. I'm by no means driving those meetings, but I do get to hear the things that our users are saying and bring it back to our product teams. And that's probably the coolest part of my job, where I get to go and say, like, I have this thing and I've done some data analysis, and I can tell you this is something that we need to our product team. And our product team is phenomenal in making those changes. So that's really in terms of equity and considering what students need what just to be able to engage, to be able to be successful. That's what I'm really excited about with an online platform.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sounds like it's really an opportunity to continue to see what kind of inclusion and availabilities for people, for anyone to be able to use your platform. So I'm thinking about the data and analytics stuff, which is an important role in most schools. Like, that's a form of measurement, or hopefully a form of conversation of student growth. How have you seen educators using that feature, especially when it comes to trying to be equitable? So no matter who you're teaching, what teacher you have, or any of those kinds of things, how can this sort of platform help with that?
I immediately thought of when Pete started talking about his class making a class band, or determining a piece of music and then creating their own versions and covers of it. Like, that sounds, first of all, that sounds like a ton of fun. And I'm sad I didn't have you as a music teacher, but
come on over.
He's the best.
We have fun.
No, but so tools. So how do we allow students to assess or be assessed? And my value solution is assessment. So I focus a lot on our new quizzes product. And also I have, as an educator, like, I think that Studio is a powerful tool because it's something that's embedded directly into Canvas, and it gives us as educators, as well as students, the opportunity to engage in a more, especially now, natural format. It's very similar to this to this format. And students, I've always suggested to teachers, allow your students to turn off their cameras and give their voice recording. I think there's a whiteboard feature out now where they can actually kind of draw on it. So, like, there's a lot of opportunity to allow students to express themselves in different ways that we don't always think about. And there's a number of ways to turn things in on Canvas. But it's really that opportunity to say, I want to say this way, even though you're assessing it in a particular way. And I know that you all probably have stories about different ways that you kind of tweak it for different students, to just allow them to have their voice heard and be successful in a similar way to students as a paper.
Yeah.
I like that you had kind of mentioned earlier about, some of these legislative bills that are coming across, or these state policies, especially around data, cybersecurity, AI, those kinds of things. So I would assume like your platform, I know it has a certain security in place for obvious reasons, but also, the more and more I see data management and how things are being shared, it makes sense to use a platform like this so that teachers can all look at it together, and that there's not a sending or sharing feature of personal identifiable information, right? Like, it's all in there. It's protected within your system so that you can just use your analytics to help have those conversations in the professional learning communities, right?
100%. And just like you said, like, it is a very close, it's its own ecosystem. And whenever I talk to admin about that, that's a really important feature that we don't think about in terms of, I may not think about in terms of data and security, but how important it is, again, for students to be able to hold and know that their information is secure, right? Like, it's not something that we maybe consider at the onset of, oh, I'm going in to teach, but how much they talk to us about, oh, this specific number about a student is not to be emailed, is not to be this. And just like you said, that opportunity to just kind of encapsulate it all is really important for their security.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
So what advice would you give, Max, for, there might be some teachers out there that are a little bit nervous about maybe using this kind of thing, or their district has said this is the LMS that we're going to be using and you've got to learn it. So what kind of steps would you recommend, or what kind of encouragement would you give to anyone out there maybe that wants to use more ed technology, or is learning Instructure? Like, how do we make sure that we keep everyone on board and don't worry, like, it's all good. You're going to be okay. They're in good hands.
There's nothing you can break with technology. And I think that's probably the best, my favorite takeaway from using Canvas, using anything. You can't break it. It's never gone. Nothing in Canvas, for instance, is ever deleted. You can always find a way to get it back. The thing that I always tell is whenever I tell admin about adopting Canvas, especially, we literally concluded every student in Fulton Virtual's year a day early. And it was like during finals and when every student had to get things completed. And it was a headache and a lot of emails for 2 hours. And then we got it figured out, and it was all turned back on within less than 90 seconds once we figured out what the error was. So you can't break anything. And going into education, I think a lot of people enjoy the opportunity to be messy in a classroom, to have students explore. And that's all we have to do when we're using technology. And I think it's kind of a gift at the same time. Like I said, I am by no means somebody who set out to be in educational technology. It's not somewhere that, if you asked me, 20 years ago, this is where I'd be, I would not tell you this is where I would be. I would have said I would still be in the same classroom I started in. Because I think that's why we all get into education. And I think technology grants us a lot of opportunity, a lot of breadth to make those mistakes and go back and fix it if it needs to be fixed. And so that's really,
you're saying, Max, go off the rails when it comes
to go do it. Go do it and have fun. That would be my number one thing. Like, go figure out what you want to do and go watch YouTube videos or figure it out.
I think that's great. I mean, I tell people all the time when they ask my help for something, because everyone seems to think I know all this stuff about technology. And I guess I do to a certain extent, but really my true secret is I tell people, I'm like, I know enough to be dangerous. And it literally is what you said, Max. I'm not afraid to get in there and just start clicking around or unplugging things and plugging, like, you know what I mean? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to learn something.
Have you guys ever made like a huge, I learned all about how our user APIs were working, but you guys ever made like something like that in a classroom? What were those best like mistakes that turned into an awesome lesson?
Right.
Yeah, I could think of a million of them, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, those were probably ended up at first, it was really scary and frustrating. And at the end of the day, it was probably like one of my best days. Right.
Yeah. I think for me, I think this is where, if I'm following, today had an incident where I had a student join the class very late for some reasons that were understandable, but we were trying to, I had to create a database account. Now this is outside of Canvas, but to your point about on the fly, so I have the ability to create the accounts and create the access to the database. Normally all that is done behind the scenes before the class, it's all ready to go so they can plug right in. Well, this I had to actually do in front of the students, and they won't have an opportunity to do that in this class, but they got to watch me, and they got to watch me also make a few mistakes as I was setting it up, and they were watching me go in, make the mistake, back out. I was kind of joking about it, and then they were watching it, and it turned into a whole lesson today on the administration side of the technology. And it was neat to see them start asking questions about it too, and ask about, different things with other aspects of the technology. So yeah, it ended up becoming a full class, which was neat. So they got to see me make mistakes, which is always nice to see for them. And then it turned into a neat lesson that I didn't expect to be given.
Hey,
Thank God it worked.
I think keeping up with in any field, the technology relating to that field, being on the cutting edge, I equate it to almost like it's like Tomorrowland at Disneyland or Future World at Epcot. Like, okay, it's been closed for 2 years. We have all these new rides. We have this new decor. We have this new technology. By the time it opens, it's already out of date. It's just a moving target. And I'm wondering, Max, how do you, being in this field, how do you stay up to date with all those latest trends and all the advancements relating to EdTech?
I've been, again, uber lucky to be a part of the conversations with our product team of late, and to be able to see what we're doing, and then to be able to go out and compare it to other things, especially, and the big one's AI, right? And how much that's going to change the conversation of technology, of access, of opportunity. And it again is an opportunity to play around with it. So staying up to date means reading a lot of newsletters that come out on a daily basis.
Sure.
But then going in and, like you were just talking about, playing around with it and seeing if it makes sense. Class Companion, which is another technology AI that came out, I think a couple of years ago. A couple of teachers were using it and they were like, "Oh, this really works for X, Y, and Z," and really seeing who's using what. I mean, I don't know all the things that I'm missing because there are a billion of them, and they keep coming out. So like just getting out, seeing what they are, and then playing around with them, I think is really important. And again, you're probably going to break something. Good, like figure out how to fix it.
Yep.
There's also like an interesting thing. I don't know if you have any advice for our teachers that are listening regarding, you said you might have a version of it that's maybe not the full-blown featured version. Like, so in other words, maybe you wanted alerts. You thought there were going to be alerts when a student uploaded an assignment, and you're seeing in your situation, in your setting, we don't have this. But then, you go on the Instructure website and you find, oh yeah, there's alerts. What advice do you have with faculty then, if that's something that they would like to see enabled? Obviously that's through certain channels, but do you have any thoughts on how to approach that?
I think it's really important to understand like a university culture, especially, or a school culture, and knowing those people that you can go talk to. I always think of like the L1s in our school system and how helpful they are, right? And just knowing them and being friends with them and saying, hey, can you look at this, or can you? And the opportunity that you afford yourself with encounters with random people, or different people in the system, and you don't know who you're talking to. And always, again, very lucky with who I've talked to in my life, but even knowing those people and striking up friendships with people who you don't necessarily know what you have in common with, and saying hey in the hallway, I think that's a huge skill, and it takes some gumption. One of my best friends was the janitor at our school, and he was awesome.
Yep.
He was phenomenal, and we made sure to get him hats and whenever we were there. And then when I was at Kennesaw State, like, no, even though I wasn't part of the faculty, I was on staff, making sure like, hey, if you need something, I'm happy to help you out, whatever it is. We'll play around with it, we'll mess around, we'll make sure we get it right, if I can help. So that was, it's an opportunity every time, especially in an environment where you're close with people.
I like that. That's a great reminder, actually, just to kind of continue to build networks and build relationships.
So, Max, we always ask this with our guests, and I'm curious to hear your answer. Is there a teacher, a coach, a mentor from your childhood that you want to tell our friends about who influenced you? Maybe something that someone that you just know that was a big part of who you became.
I'm not going to go that far back. I will go to, like, I had phenomenal mentor teachers, and somebody who kind of took me under her wing was Anna Trentacost. Now, she's still at the school that Riverwood, where I started teaching, but she was fantastic, and she just kind of kept me in the mindset of you just go to the next day, and we're to the point of you're going to mess things up. She helped me through some of that stuff, and understanding that that's okay, even in a position where you don't feel like you're supposed to mess things up. I think that that's like a huge barrier for some teachers. Like, you're not supposed to be wrong, but like we are, and that's okay. So understanding that was a huge step in my development, and has continued to be that. So yeah, that's been huge.
That's great. Well, if you'd like to share your teacher story like Max just did, please call our hotline 470-227-0TPR, because we want to hear how an educator made a difference in your life. And I love that you picked your teacher mentor. That's amazing.
Yep.
Well, Max, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about the power of equity in education. If anyone wants to reach out to you, to talk to you some more about this, or maybe they just want to connect to you about Instructure, how can they find you?
Yeah, my email is just max.gertz@instructure.com. I get emails every day from educators, faculty members, administrators, you name it. I am happy to answer emails about Canvas, happy to answer emails about how you can do different things on Canvas. Canvas tips, absolutely. Hit me up. I am happy to do that.
Deal.
HTML code, I'll throw you some buttons or something. I don't know. But yeah, absolutely.
You're never going to get rid of
Yeah,
Fred
you're
now.
not.
Fred,
You're
Never
in trouble, Max.
you
Hey, you just-
said the-
I never
you
thought
said
about
the
adding
lost dog.
HTML.
You might need to go into witness protection. Thanks, Max. And Pete, how can our friends continue to connect with us and join the conversation?
Everybody, hey, check us out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Our website is teacherpeprally.com. Wherever you're listening to us, please make sure you like, follow, subscribe, leave us a review, and let's keep this great conversation going.
Absolutely. Max, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. This is a great conversation.
Thank you all for listening. Yeah, that
Thanks,
was great.
Appreciate
I appreciate it.